All right, here we go. Welcome into the Stone Shield Show. We are here on a Friday. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us here this morning. Got bumped up to the 10 o'clock time slot today. Reed Mouse is out. He's out next week there as well, and he will be back after Thanksgiving. So certainly looking forward to having Reed back here at Chatterbox. The plan will be that we'll go at 10 next week. Unless something comes up and a guest can only do the 11 o'clock hour, then we'll slip back into our 11 o'clock slot. But the plan as of now will be for us to go at 10 o'clock, and maybe we'll have a show or two next week that does go the full 2 hours, but probably only 1 hour here on today's show. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us here on a Friday. Plenty of stuff to discuss. Craig Sandlin, he's waiting in the wings. We're going to talk to him in a second. We're going to talk to him about the Cincinnati Bengals, of course, as Joe Burrow. No official word yet. Last I checked, haven't gotten any notification that he's definitely playing, but it certainly seems like things are trending in that direction. So looking forward to talking to Craig here in a second. We'll do our college football weekend preview like we do every single Friday here at the show. Obviously, it's the week before rivalry weekend, so this is kind of always a slower week in college football, but still some very good games that we can discuss, one of which, of course, taking place here in the city of Cincinnati as the Bearcats look to snap their two-game skid here and get back on the right track against a really good BYU team that, of course, controls their own destiny. If they can win out, they certainly find their way in the college football playoff. We'll talk about that game, Missouri and Oklahoma. A lot of people kind of wrote off Oklahoma, but huge win against Alabama, and they, too, also control their own destiny. If they've done a really nice job kind of navigating their gauntlet of a schedule. They play Missouri, top 25 matchup in Norman, so that should be a good game as well. And then, of course, game of the weekend, USC-Oregon. Kind of feels like a de facto playoff game a little bit, to be completely honest with you. Look, I'm a lot higher on Oregon than the committee is. I've got them at 5. The committee has them at 7. But I think there's a real world where Oregon loses this game and they're out, despite what happens against Washington. And you would think a 2-loss Oregon team and a 12-team playoff, no issues there whatsoever. But you remember 2 of those spots, an ACC team's going to take one of them, and a group of 5 teams going to take another one there as well. Kind of feels like a de facto playoff game a little bit here for Oregon and USC. We'll talk about that game. Kentucky-Vandy trying to stay alive there as well and keep their playoff dreams and aspirations alive and well against Kentucky. That's kind of a fun matchup there in the SEC. The Buffalo Bills lost last night. How about that defense for the Houston Texans? It's hilarious. Watching a team like the Texans or the Seahawks or the Broncos, they're playing the same sport the Bengals are, and it looks a heck of a lot different. So we'll spend a little time talking about that game. Bengals, of course, play the Patriots. I believe the line's at like 6 right here at this point, so we'll go through our keys to victory for the Bengals in that game. Some notable injury stuff there as well, and, of course, our best bets of the weekend to conclude our show here on a Friday. But I do want to get to Craig Sandlin. He is kind enough to join us here on a Friday morning to talk a little Cincinnati Bengals football. Craig, you there? You got me? Can you hear me? How's it going?
I got you, man. Good morning. How we doing on this Friday?
We're doing good, man. Appreciate you making some time here, coming on. I know you got a hard out here around 10:30, but we got some time here to talk about the Cincinnati Bengals. I certainly want to talk about Joe Burrow. You've been on this for a while. I got to give you credit on that. Basically saying, hey, there's a chance he could play on Sunday, and certainly the rest of the world, certainly nationally and from a local perspective, kind of waking up to that here as well. And I think, again, I haven't seen an official word here at this point, but it certainly feels like it's trending in that direction. My question to you, what made you feel so confident that this could be the return of Joe Burrow here this week, and do we definitely think he's going to play on Sunday?
Yeah, I told Reed last night or the night before that I think it's more probable than not at this point that Joe Burrow is your starting quarterback on Sunday. If he's able to log another full participation today at practice, I think there's zero chance that he's not your starting quarterback come Sunday. We have to remember, and we learned this from the Lamar Jackson saga, obviously, is that participation is based on what your regular reps would be in practice. So this is not a full participation because he's out there with second string or with the practice squad or whatever. He's out there taking full reps with the starters. We've seen during on social media, on pictures and videos, that he's lining up with Ted Karras and taking snaps from him to make sure he's getting comfortable. So yeah, I said it, a week ago today, that I felt that Joe Burrow would be back. And I'm even more confident today that that's going to be the case. When I said it, it was one of those things where I was like, all right, well, I think there's a chance here. I might as well go out on a limb and make a bold prediction. And here we are now. I'm like, it's not even a bold prediction anymore. I think it's just fact that Joe Burrow is your starting quarterback come Sunday. But what it comes down to is Joe Burrow is a competitor. And at the end of the day, I don't think he's going to be willing to sit in practice and on the sidelines if he's healthy enough to go. And if he's healthy enough to go at practice, he's going to tell Zac Taylor that he's healthy enough to go in the game. And it was funny. I don't know if everybody saw or listened to the interview with Tom Brenneman yesterday morning with Zac Taylor, but at one point, Tom asked Zac, is there a world where Joe Burrow will come into your office and say, Zac, I'm going to play. I want to play on Sunday. And Zac kind of laughed at it because Joe Burrow has absolutely already come to Zac Taylor and told him I'm playing on Sunday.
You kind of alluded to this. Joe Burrow certainly ultra competitor, and I think you could just go out there and say he's kind of a sicko and a nut job. Do you think in his head that he thinks that he's going to come back and they're going to run the table here? Like, I mean, obviously, we go back and forth on this. The Bengals season, for all intents and purposes, is over, but they're not mathematically eliminated yet. Do you think in Joe Burrow's mind he says, you know what, we're going to beat New England, we're going to run the table and get in this thing?
I think most professional athletes have that mindset.
Yeah.
I think they're just overly confident, right?
Yeah.
Certainly if you're sitting here and you're on the Raiders or one of these terrible teams in the NFL, you're probably not sitting there thinking, all right, we're going to get going here and we're going to run the table at the end of the year. But I do think that if you're Joe Burrow with the history that he's had and the ability to lead this offense to victory, I think it's absolutely within his mindset to say, all right, I'm coming in here and we're getting to the playoffs. We're going to run the table. We're going to go 5-1 in this division. And that's going to be good enough to win the division and sneak into the playoffs. And then I'm freaking running the table in the playoffs too, and we're winning the Super Bowl because I'm tired of this whole conversation that we haven't been back to the playoffs in 3 years and we haven't won a Super Bowl in however many years it's been now. I can't even do that math. And it's time. And Joe Burrow wants to bring that to the city. He wants to get back to the Super Bowl, and he wants to win one for this city that's never won one. So. I think that's his mindset for sure. I think it's been his mindset since he got here that he's going to win basically every game. And he's done that when he's healthy for the most part. But unfortunately, the injuries have piled up against Joe Burrow.
No doubt. A matchup that I've got a close eye on here in this game, obviously no Jamar Chase, T. Higgins and Christian Gonzalez. It'll be interesting to see how New England kind of attacks that. Gonzalez, I think, is one of the best corners in the league. Maybe he doesn't get as much credit as a guy like Surtain or Stingley that we saw last night for Houston. It'll be interesting to see how New England kind of deploys their defense, because usually you see a lot of too high stuff for teams against the Bengals, but obviously no Jamar there, so it'll be interesting to see how they operate there. What's kind of your mindset here on that matchup, Higgins and Gonzalez? Because it feels like T needs a huge game if they want to have a chance.
Yeah, I mean, T's going to need to have a big game, but I think the key is actually going to be who's going to be stepping up to be your number two. And I said it on the show with Reed as well, that I think it's Mitchell Tinsley's day.
Yeah.
A lot of people are going to be looking at Jermaine Burton, figuring out, can he get on the field? But at the end of the day, it's really going to be a question of who runs those wide receiver one routes. And is it going to be T. Higgins or is it going to be Mitchell Tinsley? And then from there, how do you split up the snaps after that? Because you go to Yoshivas and then Charlie Jones, Jermaine Burton. Like the depth is really the question, because what we've already seen with teams is they've started to double our wide receivers. And so they're absolutely going to do the exact same thing this weekend with T. Higgins. They're going to make you find somebody else to beat them. Now, if Mike Gesicki is back, which I was shocked to see that he's been full go the last 2 days. If he's back as well, I think that gives you that kind of wide receiver 4 that maybe you've been missing. But you mentioned obviously Christian Gonzalez, but Robert Spillane as the linebacker is one of the better ball hawk linebackers in the league and has been for a couple of years now. Craig Woodson's been playing really well as well, and Jalen Hawkins. So there's definitely some conversation to be had about what this Patriots defense is going to do to T. Higgins, but this is an opportunity for T. Higgins to show that, hey, everybody said I was a wide receiver 1 this offseason and that I should go get wide receiver 1 money. Well, here's my chance to show that I really am a wide receiver 1 and that the $30 million that I'm making is more than worth it.
You mentioned Charlie Jones there. Obviously, he ran back a kick again earlier in the year, but hasn't really had much opportunity when it comes to running routes. He was a 4th-round pick there, I believe, so maybe you want to give him that chance. I know there's people within the organization that are high on him. Could he be a guy that steps up here? Would you like to see him get more opportunities outside of just special teams and in the passing game?
I think he's going to have to. Somebody's going to have to, right? I mean, It'll be tough. I don't know. It's been so long since we've seen Charlie Jones running
Right.
routes that it's hard to know why he's on the sideline, right? I mean,
Yeah.
certainly you would think that there's got to be something there that this Bengals team has refused basically to put him into the scheme, but somebody's got to step up today. And I know they're really high on Mitchell Tinsley, which is why it's hard to imagine a world where Charlie Jones comes in and gets a absorbent amount of snaps, but he's going to have some. There's no doubt about that. And the question is, can he take advantage of that and show that he can be a wide receiver on this team, or is he just going to be a return specialist for his entire career? That'll be his first real opportunity to do that. And, I don't know. In preseason, he looks fine, but at that point, he's going against second and third string cornerbacks. And so you mentioned he's a fourth round draft pick in 2023. This is his third year in the NFL. It's time to either put your stamp on the ability to actually be a wide receiver and get some reps, or maybe you're just going to be a return man for the rest of your career.
Coming into this year, I thought Chase Brown really was going to explode onto the scene, potentially become a household name across the NFL. That really hasn't materialized, but the past few weeks, he certainly has gotten better and has been more productive for this offense. With Burrow coming back, presumably, do you think that's going to unlock Chase Brown maybe a little bit more?
I'm actually worried he's going to do the opposite.
Okay.
If I'm being completely honest, Stone, because what we don't know is how much of this Chase Brown unlocking is the opportunities that he's getting with Joe Flacco, which Joe Burrow doesn't typically give his running backs just because he likes to throw the ball so much. How much of it is Joe Flacco ensuring that the protections are set correctly pre-snap that we don't know that answer to? We've talked a lot about that. And how much of it is just the fact that Chase Brown and this offensive line is just getting more comfortable in the run game because they've had more opportunities. And all of those are completely possible. He's now logged 4 straight games with double-digit carries after going back-to-back games against Green Bay and Detroit with single-digit carries. Like, you're never going to get, or very rarely going to get, an NFL running back going properly in the run game by giving them 8 or 9 carries. Like,
right.
Most NFL running backs need or want to get going by running the ball 15 to 20 times a game, if not more, right? So, he ran 18 times against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like, we've heard it so many times, the offensive line gets going when they get to be physical and really push people around in that run game. I think it's more so that than it is necessarily Joe Burrow or anything else. It's just Zac Taylor has to commit to actually establishing a run game, and that's going to be the real question. I've said it now for a couple of weeks, is how much has Zac Taylor learned from Joe Flacco? And how much has Joe Flacco taught Joe Burrow as it pertains to pre-snap reads and the, being under center and the run game and the importance of the run game? Because at least from my recollection, Joe Burrow hasn't really had that veteran leadership, that presence to be able to teach him all of these things from experience. And I think Joe Flacco has the opportunity to really be a big mentor for Joe Burrow, but how much has he been able to pass down is hard to know because Joe Burrow's been away from the facility most of the time for rehab and everything else. So how much one-on-one time have they really had together? I don't know. I think this weekend's going to be a really good indicator because this New England Patriots defense is really good.
Do you expect to see Burrow get, again, assuming it's him playing quarterback, to see him get under center? Because, we literally never see him under center. And obviously Flacco and even Browning to some degree were under center these past few weeks. Do you think they'll try to implement that again with Burrow, or are we back to just spreading it 5 wide and slinging that thing around?
Well, I certainly think they need to. Whether or not they will or not is a different question, I think. Now, I've seen some prognostication on X, and you can take it with a grain of salt for sure, that because of the speed of Joe Burrow's recovery, he's probably still going to have some tenderness in that toe. And so there's been conversation online about whether or not dropping back from under center is even going to be a comfortable move for him. We've seen plenty of video and images now of him doing that and taking snaps from Ted Karras and working on that center exchange, which maybe they just never took pictures of as a reporter before because it wasn't Joe Burrow coming back from a significant injury. But I certainly don't remember seeing a whole lot of warm-ups where Joe Burrow is under center with Ted Karras. And that's really what we've been seeing a lot of the last couple of days as he comes back from this injury, is him working on that center to quarterback exchange with Ted Karras. And so that gives me a little bit of hope that that's actually going to happen now, Stone. Because I do believe, and we've talked about this for years, that this offense will be electric if you can establish a running game on top of the dynamic passing game that they already have, and have a play action option to actually show and bring those linebackers up and give Joe Burrow space behind the backers to be able to complete some passes. Because right now, a lot of teams are just dropping back as soon as that ball is snapped, because they know they can get pressure with 4 or 5 guys on the line, and because they know that the Bengals are going to pass the ball more often than not.
It's been well documented. Joe Burrow isn't the same guy in the beginning of the year as he is around this time of year and Thanksgiving, and certainly into December and January. What's your gut say? Do you think we're going to see like a week 1, week 2 version of Joe Burrow? Obviously, if we do, that's not going to be good enough to win this game. Or do you think he'll pick up like it's, Thanksgiving time, which obviously it is? What version of Joe do you think we'll see coming back from this injury?
It's a great question. All the reports from camp are that he's been slinging the ball and looking great, but he looked great in the offseason too.
Sure.
And then come in and, you get what you get at the beginning of the season. So it's hard to know. I mean, certainly there's hope that he can come in and be the midseason Joe that, you know and love. How much of that midseason growth, I guess, is on Joe Burrow? How much of that is on Zac Taylor and the play calling? How much of it is on just comfort with all of the other receivers? It's hard to really know. If I'm being brutally honest, Stone, I'm not overly optimistic.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm just being completely honest with myself, and everybody here knows I'm a homer, I'm all about it. I'm Mr. Optimist most of the time. I am not overly optimistic, not only about today, but about this whole 4-game stretch.
Yeah.
But there's a world where Joe Burrow can come back and absolutely be that demon that we've seen him be before. I mean, everybody remembers what he did after he took that massive hit in college, and he came back and took LSU to the national championship because of that kind of jolt to his psyche. So there's definitely a world where it can happen, but I'm just being brutally honest here, where I'm not overly optimistic about this game.
Greg Sandlin joining us for a couple more minutes here on the show. Let's talk about kind of the Patriots angle here. I've been really high on the Patriots all year, maybe a little bit delusionally high on them, but I think they're a really good team. I've had them at 1 in my power rankings for several weeks now. One of the guys in this game, Travion Henderson, it kind of feels like he's going to be a serious issue for this Bengals team. From a defensive standpoint, what are your expectations here for Cincinnati against a really good offense in the New England Patriots? Obviously, you go down the stats. The Bengals are 32nd in a lot of the important defensive stats. But where's your head at here offensively? Is this going to be a shootout? Because it's kind of what it feels like, obviously.
Yeah, I think New England's going to try and make it a shootout, because I think they have a lot of faith in their defense to shut down the Bengals, right? So offensively, they're going to go out try and put up a bunch of points because they don't have to worry on the defensive side of the ball. You talk about, obviously, Travion Henderson, who's had this kind of breakout performance now with Ramondre Stevenson, who's been hurt. He's absolutely looked great the last couple of games. Obviously, last week against the New York Jets was fine, ran for 62 yards, but before that, against Tampa Bay, he ran for 147, and he's got 4 total touchdowns between those 2 games. So, and that's not even to count the challenge that he brings out of the backfield as a receiver. 5 catches for 31 yards and a touchdown against the Jets last week. For a team with linebacking issues like the Bengals have, keeping Travion Henderson in under wraps is going to be a huge challenge for them. But the problem is that this Patriots team has enough weapons on the outside that I don't know how you protect against all of it, right? I mean, obviously Travion Henderson can burn you on the ground. He can burn you out of the backfield as a receiver, but then you've got Stephon Diggs, who's having a little bit of a resurgence season this year. He's at 660 yards. I mean, Drake May is going to pass 3,000 yards passing this week. He's at 2836 already. We'll see if Booty's back. I haven't heard officially, but I think he's going to be coming into this one without a designation. So he'll be back. He's their deep threat. Not catching a ton of balls, but when he does, it's to the house. We all know Hunter Henry is one of the better pass catching tight ends in the league, and he's having a good year again. He's got 4 touchdowns on the year. Mac Hollins is is having a decent year as well. Demario Douglas, like they've got some depth, and it's going to be tough for this Bengals linebacking crew specifically. Just to be completely transparent, I have Trevion Henderson on my fantasy teams. I have Butte on my fantasy teams. I went out and picked up Hunter Henry for my fantasy team. Like I am fully anticipating this Patriots offense to have the type of day that we've seen from basically every team this Bengals defense has played so far this year. And that's not going to shape up well for a team who's trying to get back into it with a new quarterback under center for the first time in several weeks.
How many leagues are you in, Craig? How many fantasy leagues? Are you a fantasy nut or?
No, I mean I've got 3 leagues.
Okay.
I've got my work league, which is a 10-team traditional league, and then I'm in 2 guillotine leagues. Are you familiar with the guillotine leagues?
No, I've heard of it, but explain.
Okay. So guillotine leagues, there's 18 teams in the league to start the season, and there's no head-to-head matchups. Every week, the lowest scoring team is eliminated from the league. So week 1, you could be out of it already. So by the time we're at this point now, I think there's 8 or 9 teams left. But every week a team gets eliminated. That team's players go on waivers. You've got $1,000 of fab to be able to bid on those players to improve your team. And by the end of the year, everybody's scoring 150 to 200 points, and it's absolutely wild. So I'm alive in 2 of those right now, but Josh Allen did not do me any favors last night with his performance. And then also on that team, I also have Nico Collins, who had a subpar performance last night as well. So going into the weekend with 18.6 points out of 2 different players combined is not a good look in a league where most teams are projected to score 120 plus.
I like that though. I might have to get with the boys and throw that idea around. That seems like that could be pretty fun.
It's fun. It is. I enjoy it a lot. I've got some friends in a group chat that we talk about it, but yeah, that was the league with Josh Allen and Nico. I went out and got Hunter Henry for, but just to give you like an idea of like the depth as you get later in the season, right? So I've got Genty and Judkins are my running backs. Amon-Ra and Nico are my starting wide receivers. I've also got David Montgomery, Laporta. Like the depth is there. And then in the other one, I spent my fab early to establish what I thought was a dynamic duo at wide receiver, and it's worked somewhat. But I have Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase on that team.
There you go.
So I went out and spent a lot of money early on. I also have Sam Laporta on that one, and then I've got James Cook, who's had a great year. And Trevion Henderson, who we talked about. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I enjoy it, and a lot of thought that goes into it. You can't just kind of mindlessly set your roster every week and hope to succeed, because you will absolutely get passed up.
I love it. Might have to experiment there when it comes to that. But Drake May, I want to get your thoughts on him, because it feels like a game where Cincinnati needs to get some turnovers, and it's been 3 games since the Bengals have had one, maybe even longer than that. Where are you at with him? He's made a couple of silly throws throughout the year, but for the most part, he protects the football. How would you evaluate Drake May, and where do you think he's at as far as an MVP candidate right now in the NFL?
Well, I think that you have to be looking at him as an MVP candidate with how this season has gone for the New England Patriots. I know you guys were talking about this the other day. I do think that the Patriots are probably the biggest surprise in the NFL this year. I know there's some conversation about who exactly is the biggest surprise, but I do think it's probably the Patriots sitting here 8 straight wins after a slow start, right? They lose to Las Vegas to start their season, and you're like, all right, well, New England is New England again this year, and they beat Miami, but it was close. They lose to Pittsburgh, and you're like, all right, well, here we go. But then they get on track with Carolina. They beat them 42-13, and now they've been on this roll now where they've got 8 straight wins. And Drake May is a big part of that. I mentioned earlier he's going to pass 3,000 yards passing this week. He's only thrown 5 interceptions compared to 20 touchdowns. That 4-to-1 TD to interception ratio is pretty dang good. So he's one of the better deep ball throwers in the league. And I think that's really what's going to be a challenge for this Bengals team is, you've got to worry about so much. And the minute you start worrying about Hunter Henry and Stephon Diggs on their under routes, they're going to beat you deep with Boutte. So Drake May is absolutely in the MVP running, if not the lead in the clubhouse right now. And if he can continue the streak that they're on right now and lead them into the playoffs, I think it kind of becomes that surefire MVP. And then I don't think there's any doubt about Mike Vrabel being the coach of the year as well in that scenario. So, it's absolutely an interesting story. And, they fire their coach after 1 year last year because Mike Vrabel is available, and it has absolutely paid off for them and just shows what a good coach can do for a franchise when you have it. So.
Final one for you, Craig. I know you got to run. When it comes to the safety room, obviously there's been a lot of conversation about, why aren't we getting another body in there? We're just rolling with Geno Stone and Jordan Battle. Dejon Anthony could potentially be a factor in this game. Most Bengals fans just remember him for the PI call against Kansas City early in the season last year. But when you look at that room, would you like to see something change up? Would you like to see Tyson Anderson get a shot? And do you think that Al Golden will pull the trigger and get Geno Stone out of there or just roll him out for 100% of the snaps like he always does?
I mean, I don't understand how this team benches Logan Wilson so quickly, but then still allows Geno Stone to go out there and put forth the effort that he's been giving. Like, it just the lack of consistency is really kind of the mind-boggling piece. And you watch film from this past weekend and weekends past, and Geno Stone is consistently putting reps on tape that are just subpar. And it's not just the tackling, it's his routes, his quickness to the ball and everything in between. When we went out and got Geno Stone, it was this idea that he was going to come in and be this ball hawk and fly around the field and really cause a lot of havoc in the deep part of the field. And that just has not happened. I mean, the interceptions that he has, even for the most part, quite frankly, are just balls that he gets lucky on, right? I mean, he get tipped up and he happens to be there. He's not ball hawking. He's not making tackles. He's not knocking guys down. I really don't know what he's bringing to this team at this point. I mean, whether it's Dejon Anthony, whether it's Tyson Anderson, whether it's somebody else, I don't really care. But Geno Stone clearly isn't part of your future at this point. And I'm not sure that he even gives you the best chance to win today. And so, there's zero reason to continue to run him out there. I know Al Golden talked about him even in the offseason as soon as he got here about how impressed he was with Geno Stone, both as a leader and as a player. And I don't see it. The safety room is probably going to be one of, if not the top positional groups that this Bengals team is going to be targeting this offseason, whether it be through free agency or the draft, because they haven't really shown that they have a lot of faith in their young guys, and Geno Stone certainly isn't the answer either.
No doubt about it. Craig, appreciate you. Craig_Sandlin on Twitter, Chatterbox Bengals, Chatterbox Reds. He'll be there on Sunday with the live stream, so look forward to that, and make sure you guys tune into that there as well. Craig, appreciate the time as always, and we'll talk soon.
Yes, sir. We'll see you later, Stone.
All right, thanks, Craig. Craig Sandlin, great stuff as always, making some time for us here on a Friday morning, talking about the Cincinnati Bengals, and that segment will be out on YouTube later today, so make sure you check that out. We always appreciate Craig. Kind of a Swiss Army knife for us here at Chatterbox. He's all over the place, Reds, Bengals, social media, you name it, and does a fantastic job, and always great to have him on the show. All right, so let's transition a little bit here to our college football weekend preview. We do it every week here on a Friday. As I was mentioning at the top, not necessarily the week that we're accustomed to here in college football, right? It's just been banger week after week after week. Don't really have that here for this week, and that's kind of the way it is the week before. Rivalry week. Look, the SEC, they got to figure it out, right? Georgia's playing Charlotte. Alabama's playing Eastern Illinois. What is that, right? This cupcake before the rivalry game. That's not good for the sport, and hopefully that gets cleaned up at some point. But there are still a few good games, and there is one in the SEC. Missouri and Oklahoma. We'll talk about that. USC, Oregon, Kentucky, Vandy, and BYU, Cincinnati are the games that we're going to spend some time on. here on today's show. Let's start with Missouri and Oklahoma. That game's at noon. Top 25 matchup. Missouri 22, Oklahoma number 8. Oklahoma 6.5-point favorites at home in this game. And, look, you got to give Brent Venables a ton of credit for what he's been able to do this year. I think a lot of us looked at Oklahoma's schedule going into the year and said, oh, my goodness, that is just unbelievable. They're in deep trouble. Well, now they find themselves here on November 21st in a position where they control their own destiny, right? They beat Missouri, and next week they beat LSU. They're into the college football playoff, and that is quite the year for Brent Venables and his group. John Mateer deserves a lot of credit, right? I think in the beginning of the year he was balling, and we were like, yeah, Mateer for Heisman. And then he has that injury, right? Gets the surgery, out for several weeks, probably rushes back, has played bad football, or played really bad football the first game he came back against Texas. Has settled down a little bit. Does he look like the same John Mateer that we saw early in the year? Absolutely not, but he's definitely better than their backup option, right, here at this point. And he's gotten a little bit better each and every week as he continues to get a little bit healthier. But the story of the Oklahoma team clearly is their defense, right? They were all over the place in the game against Alabama. Won the turnover battle 3-0. If you want to go on the road and pull off a big-time upset, that's a recipe for success, right? They could have had another one, too, that actually got called back for a penalty. So that defense is incredible. They fly around. They make plays. Are they the Ohio State defense? No, but they're very much a top-5 defense in the country and can present a lot of problems. The only way I see them losing this game is if there's a complacency element, which if they do, that is a significant indictment on the head coach, Brent Venables, because your team – we're kind of, you lose to Texas, right? You lose to Ole Miss, and that's like, your season kind of hanging in the balance. Well, now you're back to controlling your own destiny. So if you're in a spot in this game against a ranked opponent where you're complacent, that isn't good. I don't expect them to be complacent in this football game. Ahmad Hardy is going to be the key, right? Obviously, he's the Missouri running back. In my opinion, the best running back in the country. He's tremendous. And, look, that's what Missouri is going to need to do if they want to have a chance in this game. So if you're Oklahoma, you load the box, right? There's a chance that Prabula, their starting quarterback, could come back. There's some rumors about that, which certainly would be a huge development for Missouri. If not, it's going to be the freshman Zollers, who, he's a freshman. He looks like a freshman, and he's going to make some mistakes, especially against a really good Oklahoma defense, but that'll be something to monitor there if Prabula can make a return. But, I mean, if you sell out trying to stop the run, which you should if you're Oklahoma, I think you're going to be able to limit some of the things that Ahmad Hardy does in this game. And I just don't see a world where Missouri scores a ton of points in this game. And again, the Oklahoma offense is hit or miss, right? It's certainly not humming the way it was at the beginning of the year. They struggled, right? They didn't score a ton of points against Alabama. They didn't need to. They still were able to win the game. But I would be surprised if you saw Missouri score more than 21 points in this game. And I feel pretty good about Oklahoma being able to score more than that. Great story. Venables, Mateer coming back from injury. And they're going to be favored. They're favored, obviously, by 6.5 points this week. And they should be favored as well next week against LSU. And credit to them. They control their own destiny. And, these are two tough games, obviously, against Missouri and LSU. They're not layups, but going to be favored in both and really have an opportunity to get in the college football playoff. And that is certainly something that would be celebrated there in Norman as they've take a look at their schedule, man. No joke. They've played some really tough games, had some adversity, lost some games, of course, but find themselves in a position where they're controlling their own destiny. And I expect them to win this game. We'll revisit this game for our best bets of the weekend. USC and Oregon, game of the weekend. Oregon 9.5-point favorites in this game against USC. And it kind of feels like a de facto playoff game, which is really crazy to say. I'm much higher on Oregon than the committee is. I've got them at 5. The committee has them at 7. And I think there's a real world where if Oregon loses this game, even if they go beat Washington the following week, that a 2-loss Oregon team could be out. I think that is a mistake. I don't think that should happen, right? But if you got a 2-loss Alabama team and a 2-loss Oregon team, you got to go with Alabama. They're in that spot, right? But I think there definitely would be a couple of teams that would get in that are not as good as Oregon. It's kind of unfortunate, right? They're still trying to work the ACC and the group of 5 in. I don't really have a strong necessarily opinion on it, but I would like the 12 best teams to be in. And the ACC, unfortunately, stinks. It's not going to stink like this each and every year, even though it's been down for a while. At some point, the ACC champion getting in isn't going to be the worst thing in the world. But, let's say Miami runs the table and gets in. Are they a top 12 team in the country? I don't know. I don't think so, right? A group of 5 team. Does Tulane? I get you want to give the group of 5, an opportunity to get in the postseason, and I think that's respectable, and you probably should. But if you're in a situation where Tulane's getting in and Oregon's out, that's kind of crazy, right? But it just shows you how big of a game this is. It's at Autzen Stadium, and this is a bad matchup for USC. We talked about the Oklahoma game being a bad matchup for Alabama. It was, obviously, and I kind of feel very similar here for this game between Oregon and USC. Dan Lanning's going to have them ready to go. What I just mentioned here, right? He's going to be saying to his team, he feels disrespected that they're at 7, right? I mean, they lost one game, and it was to Indiana, who's number 2, right? So he's going to have them playing with an attitude. He's going to have them playing with a sense of urgency in this game, understanding like, if we drop this game, there's no guarantee that we are in and have an ability to compete for a national title. So Lanning's going to have them locked in and ready to go. And the biggest thing in this game is Oregon can tote the rock, right? And USC really struggles in that department. That's kind of why I think it's a bad matchup. I think Oregon's going to have a ton of success on the ground in this game. Remember how much success Notre Dame had on the ground against USC, and obviously Price and Love are incredible, but from a numbers perspective, the Oregon ground game is better than the Notre Dame ground game, and I think they're going to run all over USC. Now, I do want to be clear, since Lincoln Riley has been here, it's always been like, too much finesse, not enough physicality. They need to score a ton of points to win. They can't, get in these nitty-gritty games and compete. Not the case this year, right? Saw it last week against Iowa. That's a gritty win. It's a physical football game, and they were able to match that physicality and come out on top. So Lincoln Riley deserves a lot of credit. This is the best job that he has done at USC, obviously, this year, among the other years that he has been there. And, look, I'm going to go out on a limb and say this is the biggest game of Lincoln Riley's career as the head coach at USC. And what's funny is we've said that a couple of times, right? We said it for the Michigan game. What did he do? He went out there and he responded, right? And, kind of you could have said it, against Iowa. Like, you got to win this game if you're Lincoln Riley. And, they went out there and they competed, and obviously they won the game there as well. So I'm very interested to see how they perform. Again, I think a lot of the matchups here go towards Oregon. We'll revisit this game for our best bets of the weekend. And Oregon also is the number 1 pass defense in the country. So it's going to, USC is going to have to be able to run the ball a little bit if they want to have success in this game and potentially win the game. But if USC pulls off the upset, they got UCLA the following week. I understand it's a rivalry, but USC will be heavy favorites in that game. They're in the college football playoff, and that is a huge success if Lincoln Riley is able to pull that off. So, if you're USC, if you're a USC fan, if you're Lincoln Riley, you want nothing more than this opportunity, right? If you want to get to the playoff and you want to be a team that aspires to compete for national titles, you got to be able to go on the road against, somewhat of a rival, right? You got those Pac-12 roots there with Oregon at Autzen Stadium and have an opportunity to win, right? And, teams usually don't win in Autzen. And, Indiana was able to do it earlier in the year, which I think is probably why they're still at 2, because that's such a huge win to be able to go there and win and dominate the way they did. So it's going to be very difficult for Lincoln Riley and company, but I am incredibly excited about this game. If there's one thing I'm concerned about with Oregon, it's that their receivers are banged up. We don't know DeCorian Moore if he's going to be playing. Gary Bryant, same thing there with him. But, I still trust Dante Moore in the passing game to get the ball to his playmakers in space, but it's running the football here. I think Oregon's really going to have a lot of success running the ball. I think they're going to keep the ball out of Mayaba's hands, and I think Mayaba is going to struggle to have a lot of opportunities in this game because the defense for Oregon is good. That's just, I don't get why they're at 7, right? Because they're good in the trenches, they can run the ball, they can defend, and they have a good quarterback and a great head coach, right? And their one loss is against the team that's ranked number 2. So I find it hard to believe that they're at 7, but like I said, we'll revisit this game in a little bit. Kentucky and Vandy. Kentucky beat the tar out of Florida. Florida obviously kind of, in shambles here at this point. But I did want to mention this game because Vandy is alive, right? They're 8.5-point favorites in this game. Kentucky, that's a good win against Florida just because they dominated so much. I understand Florida stinks. I totally get that. But, it'll be interesting to see what Diego Pavia does in this spot because I think a lot of people kind of had written them off after the loss to Texas and probably kind of wrote them off at halftime when they were getting blown out. And all of a sudden they make it a 3-point game, only lose that game by 3. And, the reason why I think Vandy can be a force to be reckoned with is they found themselves in a bunch of close games. And I think that can be very beneficial for a team, right? Ohio State, they're the best team in the country, obviously, but they're kicking everybody's butt. What's going to happen when they find themselves in a close game? We'll see. Well, maybe we won't ever see, but I think at some point they'll find themselves in a close game. It'll be interesting to see how they respond. But, Vandy's been to overtime and won, right? They went into Tuscaloosa, and if they don't turn the ball over in the red zone, they have an opportunity to win that game there as well. So Clark Lee's done a tremendous job. Pavia, you don't have to like him, but he's a really good college quarterback and brings a lot of juice to his team. And they're going to have an opportunity here because if they win this game, their final game of the year is at Neyland Stadium against the Tennessee Volunteers, who are probably still going to be ranked at that point, and Neyland's one of the toughest places to play in college football. So if they win against Kentucky and they win also against Tennessee and somebody doesn't do their job that's currently in the college football playoff, I think there's a real world where Vandy could sneak in. We mentioned earlier in the week that there's a possibility 6 SEC teams get in. I'm not predicting it. It would be crazy, but there's a world where that exists, and that's why I've got an eye on that Vandy game to see how they play against Kentucky. But wouldn't surprise me at all if Kentucky went in there and won that game, because they absolutely dominated Florida. I did not see that coming. That was pure domination there in that game from the Wildcats. Finally, BYU and Cincinnati, obviously a very important game here locally. BYU ranked number 11. And, I think we all knew, I don't want to say they were fraudulent, but we all knew they weren't one of the best teams. I think they were up to 7 in the rankings. That was extreme, right? Came back down to earth against Texas Tech. We understand that. Texas Tech's a really, really good football team. They could win the national title. I think they are that good. Not predicting they will, but I think they do have the chance to do that. And then BYU responds, right? They really go in there and beat up against TCU, who struggled certainly, but it's a huge response after losing a game like that and getting dominated the way they did against Texas Tech. But Kalani Sitake, he's done a tremendous job, and he deserves a lot of credit. He's 20-3 in his last 23 games. He's been there for a while, I think since 2016, and the program has continued to get better and better and better. He's winning with a freshman quarterback. He's winning in close games, and they control their own destiny. If they beat UC, win their final game, and then have an opportunity to play Texas Tech again. I don't think they can win that game, but, if they win out and put themselves in a spot where they're winning in, that's a huge accomplishment there if you're BYU. Looking at this line, it makes no sense. If you're a UC Bearcat fan, I think you should like it because UC's only 2.5-point dogs in this game. I really don't get it. Thought about making it one of the best bets of the weekend, but just based off Sorsby's performance against Arizona and how Scott Satterfield team struggled at the end of the year, I'm not taking it. But if you're a UC fan, you should be intrigued by that line because this should be at least 7.5, right? And it's not. It's 2.5, and that's crazy. BYU on the road hasn't been the same team as they are at home. I understand it's a long way away, Provo to Nippert Stadium in Clifton, but that to me doesn't really make much sense. The Sorsby stuff, people got carried away, which here in this town, that's fine, right? You're rooting on your guy. I have an issue with that, but people talking about dark horse Heisman stuff, like, come on, that was ridiculous. He really struggled in the game against Arizona. Arizona's fine, but where UC was trending and talking about potentially competing for a Big 12 championship, and you're going in there against Utah, right? And that was a huge game, college football, game day game, and you just kind of fell flat on your face here. You got to be careful in this spot if you're Cincinnati because, Satterfield, he got a lot of credit early on. They're winning games. It's like, they could compete for the Big 12. All of a sudden, you get blown out by Utah. You lose at home to Arizona. You're a better team than Arizona. You lose that game. Well, if you lose to BYU, what's to say you don't lose to TCU as well to end the year, and then you're staring 7-5 right in the face, and you're like, well, we thought we were making progress this year, but we had another horrible end of the year. What do you do with Scott Satterfield? I think that becomes a question here at this point. So this is a huge game for the Cats. Again, if you're a fan, I think you're intrigued here. Vegas clearly sees something. The line makes no sense whatsoever. if I'm a Bearcat fan, I'm definitely taking it, but I'm going to stay away as far as the best bets of the weekend. But we'll see. You know, you see with Walker, they can run the ball. They got some guys on the outside. Sorsby has to play better than he did against Arizona because that was downright awful, his performance there in that game. They have a good offensive line that should be able to hold up. Obviously, you have question marks about the defense in that game. But the line makes no sense. I'm staying away. But only 2.5-point dogs in that game for the UC Bearcats. All right, let's see here. Let's transition a little bit back to some more Cincinnati Bengals talk. Big game, obviously, on Sunday against the New England Patriots. And, you know, we've said the season is over from a playoff perspective. We're allowed to say that as fans. And as I've said several times, the players aren't allowed to say that. And the coaches aren't allowed to say that either. And they better be competing and playing like their playoff lives are on the line, which they are. Right? You got to win out if you want to get in, which, you know, I can't even say that with a straight face with this team and this defense. The prospect of winning out and it starting against the team that I have at number 1 in the NFL for several weeks now. Hard to wrap your head around. But there's a real world where Joe Burrow plays quarterback for this team on Sunday, which is absolutely unbelievable. You know, I've been checking, the phone, waiting for an update of somebody saying, yep, he's going to play for sure. It's trending in that direction. He's taking the first team reps. He's not a limited participant. He's a full participant. Joe Flacco's been a limited participant. All signs are pointing towards him playing. So I'm just going to operate under the assumption that he is playing. It wouldn't surprise me, though, if he wasn't, right? I've said on this thing I'm very much 50-50. Now, in the public eye, in the national eye, it doesn't seem or sound like 50-50 here at this point. In my head, it is just because, you know, what the timeline was with the injury, where you're at as a team, and the fact that nobody has, you know, commented on, we intend on him playing. But I think in a perfect world, they would have liked to wait till Thanksgiving. And maybe they would have if they had one more win. But, again, you have to win out if you want to get in, right? 9-8, I don't think is cutting it. I really don't. But you've went 9-8 the past 2 years, and obviously it wasn't enough. So, you know, maybe if they would have won one of the Jets or the Bear game or, you know, Lion or just one of these games that they would have won, maybe it's different. They hold them off for Thursday. But if your intent is to make the playoffs, which it has to be if you're the players and the coaches, you got to go now with Joe Burrow. And it's interesting because you remember when Lamar was banged up earlier in the year, Craig pointed this out, when you have a game on Sunday and then you transition into a short week, maybe you got to hold him off on the Sunday game and then he'll roll out there on Thursday and he'll play. Bengals, of course, play on Thanksgiving night. It's kind of interesting, right? Again, if you were in a spot where you weren't in win-out mode and there was some room for error, maybe you make that call, but you're not. You got to run the table here, and it all starts at home against New England. And, obviously you want to protect the player, right? But if the doctors clear him and say he's good to go, clearly Joe Burrow wants to go, right? I mean, there was a report from Jeremy Rao, Fox 19. T asked him, and Joe just kind of gave him a look, right? Like, clearly he wants to go out there and he wants to play. And I would say clearly he feels like he is able to play. I kind of thought that we would know by now, right? A game time decision thing doesn't really make much sense to me, right? From a guy coming off of surgery, again, like if it's an ankle injury and you're a week to week, then maybe it's game time decision. This doesn't seem like a game time decision type of move, especially if a guy's practicing in full. Zac Taylor doesn't really operate that way, but maybe we're not going to know until a couple minutes before game time or when he runs out there with his pads on, right? So we'll see. Again, at this point, I expect him to play. And then it comes, okay, well, how do you go out there and win the game? It'll be awesome to see him run out there, assuming he does. There will be a spark. There will be a juice. There will be a newfound life, a newfound energy. But then it will become time to play football. Right? And, a lot of your issues that you have are still going to be issues for you. Joe Burrow coming back to play quarterback isn't going to solve all your problems on defense. We all understand that. But we'll start with the offensive side of this game because it's very interesting to figure out how this game is going to play out, right? Because Joe Flacco obviously has done some stuff under center, which I think a lot of us like, right? Open up the play action game. We've never seen play action from under center with Joe Burrow. What do? Do you do that, right? I mean, you saw him kind of getting some work in with Ted Karras. Again, maybe he typically always does that, but he's rarely under center. I personally think it would be a good thing to have Joe Burrow under center. Craig mentioned that he thinks that it could work in a negative way towards Chase Brown. I got to push back on that a little bit. I think if Joe Burrow had been playing this year, Chase Brown would be going crazy, right? But that's not the case, right? Because you have to be so worried about the receivers and Joe Burrow making a play down the field. There would be so many opportunities to dump it off to Chase Brown, and he's got great speed, and he'd be able to run. I think Chase Brown in the passing game, if Joe Burrow had been healthy all year, would be something that was a huge threat for the Cincinnati Bengals, and we'll see if that can become the case here. Again, I would like to see some under center stuff, not just, Burrow's back 5 wide, we're chucking it around. Yeah, it's fun, but it's not, conducive to protecting your quarterback, right, and protecting your offensive line for that matter as well. We've talked about this a lot with offensive line play. The offensive line seemingly has gotten a little bit better from the eye test. Well, the plays that are being called and the threat of a run game, that helps out the offensive line. It's very difficult when you line up 5 wide and you go, okay, they're not throwing the ball. They're not running the ball. They're definitely throwing the ball. It's a lot harder as an offensive line. It's just not sustainable to be able to do that. And, it's asking a lot of them, and it's putting the quarterback in a tough spot. So I would like to see some more under center stuff. I think we all would. But this has an opportunity to be a huge T. Higgins game. And that is very exciting. The thumbnail on this video, it's the perfect picture, right? Burrow and Higgins from after the Denver game last year. I see T going crazy in this game, regardless of who's out there playing quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals. T. Higgins I'm telling you, he is a top 12 to 15 wide receiver in this league. He is a 1 for many other teams. Most of the time you have the too high stuff with, safeties running that too high look against the Bengals because you got to protect against Chase and Higgins. It'll be interesting to see how they do it. Obviously, he's going to get double a lot in this game. I understand that, but they're going to understand the importance of getting him the football. And, if Joe Burrow's back, they're going to take some shots down the field to T where he can high point the ball, and I'm really looking forward to that. I think T's going to have a big game, right? This feels like a huge T. Higgins game, regardless of who's out there playing quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals. The matchup with Gonzalez is going to be fascinating. We'll see, how often it's Gonzalez, how often it's Carlton Davis. If they just have Gonzalez follow T around, that will be fascinating to watch. Gonzalez is one of the best corners in the league, right? But I just got done praising T. Higgins. That's good on good. That's great on great. And that's going to be a fascinating matchup to watch in this game. I think Surtain's clearly the best corner in the league. And a guy like Stingley, of course, for the Texans is a really, really good player there as well. But, Gonzalez, he kind of belongs in that conversation. He's a really, really good player. And then the question is, someone else needs to step up, right? If Gesicki can come back too, that's awesome, right? I think the world of Mike Gesicki. I was pounding the table saying Bengals need to bring back Mike Gesicki. They did. Well, then Burrow gets hurt, and then he gets hurt, and it just really hasn't been able to get going. But don't forget about the 2024 Mike Gesicki from last year. That was unbelievable. If he comes back, that's huge, right? There's your 2 right there if Gesicki's back. Higgins and Gesicki, heck yeah, you can win with those 2 guys. And then what else do you do at the receiver spot, right? Again, talked about, Chase Brown getting unlocked. Well, how does that look for Yoshi? Right? Because Yoshi with Joe Burrow out there, we all love. We all love that version of Yoshi when Joe Burrow's out there. When he's not out there, we don't necessarily love that version of Yoshi. He was great in the first quarter against Pittsburgh and then was pretty much silent throughout the remainder of the game. But Yoshi and Burrow, that's a connection to look out for, right? I saw it a little bit in San Francisco with Kittle. Kittle's obviously tremendous, but clearly he's better with Purdy than Mac Jones, and that's very clear. Similar situation here, potentially, with Yoshi to be unlocked a little bit more. And the Bengals staff clearly trusts him. People are saying, get him off the field, get him off the field. They stuck with him, and they continued to put him out on the football field. And, he was able to produce against Pittsburgh. And then the question beyond that, right, is Jermaine Burton finally going to be active? Who knows, right? That was 3rd-round pick. Traits are there. Mindset clearly not there. Will he get an opportunity? I don't know. It kind of feels like no, to be honest with you, despite the fact the Bengals need him. Mitchell Tinsley, of course, a guy that's going to get some looks there as well. And I would like to see Charlie Jones have an opportunity. He's a 4th-round pick. You would like to see a little bit more than just return specialist for him. And, look, if I've joked about, Charlie Jones kind of running out to the 25 and just getting shellacked. But if you continue to have years where you run back a kick for a touchdown, you're going to continue to have that opportunity. And he ran another one back this year, so I think he'll probably be the guy at that spot for a couple of more years. But I also think there's some stuff he can do from a receiver perspective. We'll see if he gets an opportunity in the game as well. So if Burrow's back, obviously the offense is going to be fun. We're all going to have our eyes on it, and you just hope that he's able to look like November Joe Burrow, right, and not September Joe Burrow, because there is a big difference. And there's enough data out there to say that, yeah, Joe Burrow, the first couple games, isn't the same guy. That's just kind of how it is. It's how I expect it to be next year, regardless of, the health in which he has throughout the offseason. But hopefully he can show up ready to go and he looks like Joe Burrow. Because if he does, there's always a chance. Always a chance if number 9's out there. And we'll see if ultimately that happens. Now, the not-so-fun part of this conversation, the defense, right? This is a really good New England offense. Drake May, right? Great player. Obviously, Vrabel's done a tremendous job. Probably coach of the year if they continue to win. Certainly if they get the 1 seed. I think Shanahan deserves a ton of credit for what he's able to do. He probably would get my vote right now, but Vrabel, what he's done is tremendous if they get the 1 seed, obviously. You got to give it to him. But Drake May, I think very highly of him. I've been up front. I've had the Patriots at 1 in my power rankings for several weeks. Doesn't mean they're unbeatable. I think there's very much a world where Cincinnati can win this game, especially with Joe Burrow playing quarterback, assuming that he does. TreVeyon Henderson is the guy where it's like, yeah, that seems like the type of guy that's going to absolutely smoke the Bengals defense because he's faster than everybody the Bengals have, and he runs with some violence despite not being the biggest guy there in the world. And I could see him just lowering his shoulder and blasting Geno Stone in this game, if Geno Stone, of course, is going to be out there. Stephon Diggs, we've talked about this a lot when we've talked about the Patriots. Say what you want about him, right? He's drama queen, selfish, certainly at times, some questionable decisions off the field, but when he was with Josh Allen, it was like, this dude's a real dude. Same thing in Minnesota. And then he had kind of been quiet the recent years as far as his production. And then New England said, no, we want to go out there and pay him. And a lot of people were like, wait, what are you doing paying him? It's worked out. Stephon Diggs has been tremendous. We'll see, assuming Turner gets matched up with him. Juan Drago, as Reed likes to say. And we'll see what that matchup looks like. But Stephon Diggs has been brilliant for them. Hunter Henry, right? That's a guy. Who are you going to put on him? Tight ends obviously always abuse the Cincinnati Bengals. A young quarterback, their security blanket. Yep, it's the tight end. Hunter Henry's going to be an issue in this game. And if he's matched up with Barrett Carter, you don't feel pretty good if you're the Cincinnati Bengals. But one thing I will say is you saw defensive improvement against Pittsburgh. If you didn't watch the game or you didn't pay attention to the game, you look at the score and say, 30-plus points. What are you talking about? 2 touchdowns scored on defense for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And you did a nice job stringing together some 3-and-outs, right? You're forcing some punts against Pittsburgh in the first half, and your offense wasn't able to capitalize. Well, if you string together some 3-and-outs or some punts in the first half, and Joe Burrow's playing, you're going to score some points. You're absolutely going to score some points. Now, the defense in the second half, there was really only 2 possessions. They were long possessions. They gave up 3rd and a mile several times. Certainly not good. So they kind of reverted back to old habits there in that degree. But that first half performance you got against Pittsburgh, you'll take that. You'll absolutely take that in this game if you're the Bengals. And obviously you got to find a way to force turnover, right? If you don't force any turnovers on defense, probably not going to win. You could say that most weeks, but when you're a bad team, you really need to say that, right? The only reason you won the Pittsburgh game on Thursday night was because you forced some turnovers, despite the fact that Joe Flacco was unbelievable in that football game. You forced some turnovers, and that ultimately is what helped you win that football game. And you got to get back to doing that. It's been 3 games, 3 consecutive games. They haven't forced a turnover defensively. Can't happen. Drake May, he makes a lot of good decisions. We've seen him make a couple of bad decisions. The throw in the end zone against Tampa immediately comes to mind late in the game. It's like, what are you doing? That's just a force, right? And I think Drake May understands that, I got a chance to go off in this game, right? I got a chance to score 40 points and cement myself as the MVP frontrunner. Might be some bad decisions that come with that. We'll see if the Bengals can capitalize at all in their secondary. But defense is clearly where you have your eye on here, right? The New England offense is really, really good, but it's not, all world, right? It's not the best offense in the National Football League. Better than the Pittsburgh offense, but if you can force some punts, get off the field, get a couple turnovers, you'll have an opportunity to hang in there in this game. And we'll see if there's any personnel changes there. I mean, if they can't tackle and Geno Stone just gets ran over and doesn't provide maximum effort and he is out there for 100% of the snaps, I might lose my mind. But at the same time, I don't think that would surprise any of us there as well. All right, let's do our best bets of the weekend, and then maybe for a second we will talk about the Thursday night game. Last night, appreciate Craig Salem for stopping by. Of course, one of our guys, Chatterbox Bengals, Chatterbox Reds. He's all over the place, doing a great job, and we certainly appreciate him. Had some great guests on the show this week. We had Scott Springer on the show yesterday. Make sure you check out that interview if you haven't done so already. We previewed the game tonight at Heritage Bank, Cincinnati and Louisville. Check that out. Great stuff from Scott Springer, Cincinnati.com, and the Inquirer. Paul Daner Jr. From The Athletic, he stopped by, had some great insight on the Cincinnati Bengals. That interview, it's up. It's on the channel. There's some clips out on social media there as well. And Joe Goodberry, we kind of looked at the film side of things with Joe, and we certainly appreciate him stopping by. All those interviews are out on the channel. Check them out. All right, best bets of the weekend. We do it every Friday. We are open and transparent, as always, with our best bets of the weekend. 25, 29, and 1 on the season. Not great, but we're closing in on 500. We get to 500. The sky's the limit for us. 2, 2, and 1 last week. And we going back to an even number here, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep. We got 6 plays this week. We've done 5 a lot. We did 6 a little bit early in the year. It's not always the best thing in the world, best idea in the world, doing an even number, but we went with 6 here in this week. The one that we did not go with that I almost put in there for a 7th, but I did not, was UC. So if you're a Bearcat fan, I think you should be very intrigued by that line, because a lot of times when you look at a line like that makes no sense at all, probably a good thing to hit it. And I don't know what Vegas sees in that game, but UC only 2.5-point dogs. So some interest there, but we left it out this week. First one, Oklahoma, -6.5 at home against Missouri. Right, the only shot Missouri has is running the football. I get they got Ahmad Hardy. I get he's the best running back in the country, but Oklahoma, if you watch the game against Alabama, they can stop the run, right? And there's some questions on the quarterback situation for Missouri. I like this either way. There's a chance Perbula could come back, which would be a great story if he did, but it's probably going to be the freshman Zollers out there for them. I just don't think they have enough throwing the football, and I said this when we previewed the game. Only way Oklahoma loses this game is if they're incredibly complacent, which that would be a significant indictment on Venables. You're in a spot here where it's Thanksgiving week, and if you win 2 games you're going to be favored in, you're in the college football playoff. There's nothing to be complacent about if you're the Oklahoma Sooners. I think Mateer has steadily gotten better each week. Again, he's not early season Mateer. He's not pre-injury Mateer, but he's going to score enough points against Missouri. Fine defense, but I see them getting at least 24 points in this game probably, and it's hard for me. I would be shocked if Missouri got more than 21, but I think they'll probably be around 13, 14, to be honest with you. So I like laying the 6.5 here with the Sooners, and I think they're going to win this game against Missouri. Ranked matchup, it's at noon. Should be a good game. Should be a compelling game, but I think Oklahoma just has too much. The defense is too good. They'll force a couple of turnovers, especially if Zollers finds himself behind, has to force some throws. Oklahoma will capitalize on that. I like the Sooners -6.5. Also like the Ducks, -9.5 at home. We previewed that game as well. It's the game of the weekend. Huge game for both these teams. Again, I think there's a real world where Oregon has to win this game to get in, right? I mean, usually this day and age, the 12-team playoff, you're a Big Ten or SEC team, you only have 2 losses, you're fine. I don't know if it's necessarily setting up that way for Oregon, which I don't agree with. I've said that. Oregon is at 7 in the rankings. I don't get it. I think they should be 5. That's where I have them. But it's kind of is like a de facto playoff game. And USC, if they win this and then they beat UCLA, which they're going to be heavy favorites in that game, they're in. And that would be huge for Lincoln Riley and USC here, as obviously he's been there for a couple of years. But as I mentioned, bad matchup for USC in this game. They're not good at stopping the run. Look what Notre Dame did against them. I understand Notre Dame can run the ball really, really well, but the numbers would say that Oregon can actually run the ball better. So I think this is going to be a time of possession battle that's going to go significantly in the favor of Oregon, right? I don't think Mayava is going to have a ton of opportunities. Oregon also the best passing defense in the country. So that's a lot to ask for at Autzen Stadium. Indiana won there earlier in the year, but you don't just go into Autzen Stadium and win. This would be the biggest win of Lincoln Riley's career as the head coach at USC if he's able to do it. I think it's the biggest game he has coached in at USC since he has been here, but Lanning's going to have them locked in. He's going to have them motivated. I don't see a world where they lose, but just based on that matchup, I see Oregon, first possession, going down, running the rock, punching him in the mouth, and scoring right away. And just never really, just having complete control throughout the entirety of the game. They got some receivers that are banged up, which isn't ideal, but they got a quarterback that's made some good decisions, and he seems like a really good player. I'm not going to put him on the same pedestal as a Julian Sayin or a Ty Simpson or a Mendoza even. Not quite there, but he's a really good quarterback, and he's going to protect the football. He's going to make smart decisions, and they're going to lean on their run game, and they're going to lean on their defense, which is really, really good as well. Got to be good in the trenches. Got to be good defensively if you want to potentially win a national title. Oregon 100% can win a national title. I don't get why they're getting disrespected a little bit by the committee. They're definitely going to win. I also think they're going to cover the 9.5 there as well. Give me the Ducks. How about this? Give me TCU. Plus 1.5. Shout out Willie J for this pick. I like it. I like it a lot. Houston, they're ranked. I don't know why. They beat UCF. Nice. Congrats. Well done. You're ranked. And the biggest thing for me, and TCU has struggled, right? I mean, they won some games to start the year. Sonny Dykes, they've gotten blown out a few times. They've struggled. This is not a good team at all in TCU. But plus 1.5. They go into Houston. The biggest thing for me is the quarterback play. Josh Hoover's incredible. He's a great quarterback. And, more people would be talking about him if they were winning some more games. But I think they have the quarterback advantage over Connor Wigman. And, look, they're going to – I don't know how much success they're going to have running the ball, but they're going to ask Hoover to do a lot in this game. And, Houston at home, they've been really good on the road. Struggled a little bit at home. I think Sonny Dykes goes in there, has an opportunity to really pick up a big win against a ranked opponent. Again, I don't understand why Houston is ranked, to be completely honest with you, but I like Hoover and the Frogs plus 1.5 at Houston. All right, 3 in the NFL. We've only done this once all year, and it worked on Thursday Night Football against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Give me the Cincinnati Bengals plus 6. At home against the Patriots. I'm operating under the assumption that number 9 is going to be the quarterback on Sunday. And if you told me after that injury in week 2 that we would see him again, right, and you're going to get 6 points at home, I don't care who you're playing. Sign me up. And, look, the Patriots are going to score, but if Niners out there, the Bengals are going to score too. I think T. Higgins is going to have a massive game. I think Chase Brown has a big game. He gets unlocked a little bit more. Hopefully the offensive line continues to hold up, and Burrow isn't an idiot and gets rid of the ball a little bit quicker and doesn't try to put himself in harm's way immediately coming back. I think the defense made some significant strides that not many people are talking about, because you look at the score and you go, well, they got blown out. And Burrow certainly has stole all the headlines here, and not many people talking about the defense. Defense is bad, still probably the worst in the league, but there was a lot of improvement there in the Pittsburgh game. I think we'll see a little bit more there as well. I think there'll be a new juice, a new energy to this Bengals team. That'll last right when you run out on the field, and as I mentioned, then you got to play ball. But I like Cincinnati in this spot. Give me the Bengals plus 6. 2 more. Chiefs, minus 3.5 against the Colts. We took the Chiefs last week. That didn't work out. They're 5-5, but seeing them fall under 500 as we approach Thanksgiving, just really hard for you to wrap your head around. Talking about like, what's the most surprising team in the league? I don't think it's the Patriots. I think it's the Colts. But I also think the Colts are coming back down to life a little bit more. Obviously, they're very reliant on Jonathan Taylor. Great player, should be considered in the MVP conversation. Last time we saw them, they were messing around with the Atlanta Falcons, needed overtime in that game. The Falcons are not a good football team. So, I said early in the year, the Colts are definitely for real. They're definitely going to win a playoff game. I don't know if they're going to win a playoff game here at this point. That'll probably change my mindset if they go into Kansas City and win. But going into Arrowhead this time of year and winning, not very likely. I've got some reservations on the hook, but I'm going to take it. And part of the reason why is this Chiefs team, you watch their games, it's not like, they didn't play well enough on defense, or, they didn't play well enough along the offensive line, or, they dropped a ton of passes. They've lost some of these games because Patrick Mahomes has not been Patrick Mahomes. I'm not going to sit here and bank on that continuing, right? He's taking a lot of ownership at the podium, as he always does. He's like, I got to play better. You watch him. He's got to play better. He doesn't look like Patrick Mahomes right now. Again, I'm not banking on that continuing, especially with their playoff livelihoods on the line. Can you imagine a world where the Chiefs miss the playoffs? Would be crazy. But it becomes a significant uphill battle if they lose this game. I think they're going to be playing with their hair on fire. Kelsey still maybe his last year in the NFL, but he still has that ability to really turn it up there at the in certain games, a handful of games, like playoff games. Certainly, it kind of feels like a playoff game a little bit for the Chiefs, and I'll lay the 3.5 and take them. I'm also going to take the Las Vegas Raiders minus 3.5 as well. They're playing against the Cleveland Browns. everybody is, and their brother is all over the Cleveland in this spot. Why? Shedeur Sanders is playing. He just went 4 of 16. He looked absolutely awful. And you think he's going to turn that around and play well here in this game? Right? Let's not act like the Ravens defense is a typical Baltimore Raven defense. It ain't. I understand the Raiders defense isn't that good either, and I understand their offense is bad too. But if you watch that last game that the Raiders played against Dallas, they were moving the ball. They were just stalling out. And I get the Cleveland defense is really, really good. This is going to be an ugly game. It's going to be a low-scoring game. But I'm going to take the Raiders minus 3.5. I don't see the Browns scoring many points at all in this game. Not that I score the Raiders scoring a bunch either, but I think they're going to score at least 4 more than the Browns do, if that makes sense. Look, I get we're all intrigued about Shedeur. We're all going to take a peek at it and see how he's doing. But I don't expect him to play well at all in this game. I really do not. And, Geno Smith is fighting for his career at this point, and Pete Carroll's fighting for his job. And these are two really, really bad football teams. But Shedeur Sanders has a habit of running backwards. And when Max Crosby's coming after you, that's not a good idea. So I anticipate him taking some big-time sacks, losing some big-time yardage, which basically forces you into a punt. I think he's going to throw the football to Vegas a couple times in the game there as well. Geno Smith has been terrible, but he's better than Shedeur Sanders, and I expect the Raiders to cover this game. Oklahoma, minus 6.5. Oregon, minus 9.5. TCU, plus 1.5. Bengals, plus 6. Chiefs, minus 3.5. And the Raiders, minus 3.5. Our best bets of the weekend. Lastly, before we get out of here, just a couple of thoughts on the game last night. That watching the line there in that game, it was setting up for the Texans to win. Took the Texans. That was, from the very beginning of that game, I was like, all right, yep, that's the side to be on here. And I was joking about this with Craig. Like, they're playing the same sport the Bengals are. And it looks like they're playing a totally different sport with how they operate on defense versus how the Bengals do. Look, I picked the Texans to win the division at the beginning of the year. I felt good about it, too. I knew the defense was going to be solid. I thought Stroud would make strides in the right direction. That hasn't really materialized. But they're not out of this thing. Probably out of it for the South, but they very much could be a wild card team here at this spot, which is unbelievable. Davis Mills, he misses a ton of throws, but he has stabilized them. With Stroud being out, Stroud's going to return next week. Probably would have played if this was a Sunday game, but short week. They'd sit him out another week. And, we'll see how he does. But this defense, man, I mean, I was watching the Denver defense. I watched them a bunch this year, and the Seattle defense, and I kind of thought, I had heard, the Texans defense really good and the best technically by the numbers. I was like, I don't know if they're better than Denver. Yeah, they're unbelievable at all levels of their defense. Will Anderson, he's one of the best players in the league. Right? I mean, that guy is absolutely unbelievable. Young player, too, going to be there for a while. And if Stroud can get back to how he was playing his rookie year, I mean, you're going to be looking at Nick Caserio and saying, you took Stroud and Anderson there in that first round a couple of years ago, that you hit both of them out of the park, potentially. But Stroud certainly has regressed. He's gotten banged up a lot, so we'll see how he responds. But they're definitely going to be better offensively with him than they are with Davis Mills. But he's unbelievable. Danielle Hunter, I remember I was laughing when the Texans paid him. I forget what he's making, but it was like a one-year deal, and they're paying him a ton of money. I'm like, what are they doing? Danielle Hunter is a monster. That guy is absolutely huge. He's ferocious. He's a great player. Right, and then Stingley. I mean, he's clamps. He's clamps there on the outside. They got guys all over the place there on that defense. D'Amico's done a tremendous job. Obviously, he's not calling the plays anymore for them defensively, but they are really buttoned up. And, you have a defense like that in a playoff game, they can win any game. They can absolutely win any game. So, my takeaway from that was, wow, the Texans they're not out of this thing by any stretch, especially with CJ coming back next week. Buffalo, interesting. Is the sky falling in Buffalo? No, but I think clearly, they're not a great football team. And, they have an opportunity to get hot and potentially catch New England. But if New England beats Cincinnati, New England's going to run away with that division. Then you're looking at Buffalo as a wild card team, which, anytime you have Josh Allen in the playoffs, you always have a chance at winning a Super Bowl. He does some silly stuff, but he's so reliant on I'll just escape the pocket and you're not going to catch me and you're not going to be able to bring me down and I'll make a play. But those guys along the defensive line for Houston were catching him and bringing him down. And that you don't see Josh Allen get sacked like that. It's pretty crazy. But that offensive line for Buffalo, you got some issues there. Was Josh great in the game? No, but I don't necessarily blame him for the loss. That offensive line, they look slow and unathletic. Maybe that's just because Houston is so good up front. I'm not quite sure. But you got questions defensively, too, if you're the Buffalo Bills. And that's Sean McDermott's thing, right? He's calling the shots there defensively. And you always talk about this when you have an elite quarterback like Josh Allen. Do you want to break up that relationship with him and McDermott? Would you think about moving off of McDermott? I don't know, right? The GM, whenever you pick a guy like Josh Allen, their GM did, he's there for as long as Josh Allen is there. I don't care how many picks he misses. He got him out of Wyoming. He's safe. But it'll be interesting to see what they do with McDermott. There have been people that floated that around as job security from time to time. I don't think I would make a move off him. Again, I don't like breaking that up when you have an elite quarterback, kind of why I've defended Zac Taylor for so long. But that's certainly a decision because he's calling the shots defensively, and their defense is not good. They've got issues there. I mean, that 2-minute drill, they let Davis Mills go down the field, no problem, right before half and score. It's like you ran a kickback earlier in the half, gained some momentum, and then Houston's like, no, we're going to go score, no problem. And you're never really able to get that momentum back. So you got some serious questions there defensively. People are going to ask themselves, is the window closed for Buffalo? No, right? It's same as Joe Burrow. Maybe like the version of the Bills that we've seen over the past few years, they're going to have different guys, fine. But as long as 17's there, their window is open. Similar here in Cincinnati, as long as Joe Burrow is there as well. But interesting. Looks like New England going to win that division. Buffalo probably a wild card team here at this point, and that's dangerous. That's dangerous. But certainly, the line was weird. That defense is really good for Houston, and they showed the world why last night. And Houston by no means out of it there as well. Really good Thursday night game. Hopefully we get some good NFL games there as well. The slate, nothing crazy. I think that Bucs-Rams game certainly is compelling. And obviously Bengals-Patriots as the Bengals look to get off the schneid here and pick up their 4th win. And hopefully Joe Burrow is playing quarterback. Appreciate everybody hanging out. We were a little bit earlier today in the 10 o'clock slot. Reed Mouse, he was out. He's out tomorrow. He's out next week there as well. So our plan will be to go at 10 o'clock next week. That's the plan. We will fall back into our 11 o'clock window if, for instance, there's a guest that says, well, I can do the 11 o'clock hour, I can't do the 10 o'clock. Then we'll probably fall back. We'll have 4 shows next week. We won't have a show on Thanksgiving Day, but we'll be there on the Wednesday. We'll be there on the Friday, so with some holiday season coverage here at the show. So make sure you check that out. And we'll get with Casey McAllister. Maybe we'll do a 2-hour show, as we kind of went about an hour and 20 minutes here today. But maybe we'll do a 2-hour show or 2 next week there as well. Hopefully we can get some more guests. Then I want to thank all the guests that came on this week. Really great stuff. Getting their opinions certainly is great, and it certainly helps impact our show and improve our shows there as well. So we've had a good run with the guests, and we hope to continue that into next week. Great weekend of sports. Didn't even get to talk about the soccer game. I don't really have much thoughts on that other than go FC Cincinnati. Hopefully they can pull off a big-time win against Messi. Sunday, City should be buzzing, right? Potential Joe Burrow return and Messi in town. That's pretty exciting. And it all begins tonight at the Heritage Bank Center with Cincinnati and Louisville. Also a great high school football game tonight. I'm a public school guy, so I don't really care about what's going on at Paycor Stadium, but I know a lot of people do. I'll be tapped into what's going on at Heritage Bank. UC 9.5-point dogs against Louisville. Kind of hoping it was a little bit bigger number than that. If I'm a UC fan, I not necessarily love that, but it's going to be awesome. The guard play you're going to see in this game, tremendous, specifically from the Louisville side. And the UC defense has been good, but they haven't faced an offense like what Louisville can bring to the table. Mustafa Chiam, to me, is the biggest, most impactful guy in this game for Cincinnati, right? Because if there's one thing that Louisville has a bit of a weakness, it's like, well, how are they getting to the rim, right? What if there's a big guy in there swatting some basketballs away? How will that go? And Chom's going to have an opportunity to do that. It could be a real coming out party for him. Great in the second half against Mount St. Mary's. I think he's the key to the game tonight for the Cats. And obviously you got to hope that the Cards are at least a little bit off from a shooting perspective, because they have 4 guards that can just flat out make it rain. And they have throughout the year to this point. But looking forward to that game. Huge game for UC. Kind of a state of the program type of game, right? Figure out exactly where UC's at here over the course of the next few weeks before Big 12 play. But certainly looking forward to that. All right. Appreciate appreciate everyone. As always, podcast will be up later this afternoon. Make sure you check that out. Clips on YouTube there as well. All of our segments, they'll be out on the page. Follow me on social media at StoneShields _ on Twitter. Follow the show at the Stone Shields. I think we have 99 followers. Obviously got a long way to go, but let's get 100 by the end of the UC game. I know one of you guys isn't following the show on Twitter. Let's get to 100 at the Stone Shields on Twitter. Got 99 followers. Come on, we got to get 100 here before UC tips off tonight against Louisville. But looking forward to that. Have plenty to discuss next week, and hopefully we're talking about a Cincinnati Bengals win where Joe Burrow throws for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. That certainly would be pretty cool. But hoo-day, everybody. Looking forward to that game. And until Monday, take care, everybody.